We're at the BYU Museum of Paleontology. Let's head on inside and see what we find. The first thing you see when you walk in, off to the right here, off to the left you have this display of tools and old school depictions of dinosaurs and old outfits, but off to the right here we have the types of preservation, which I think is amazing, with encrusting, carbon film, compression, impressions, pickled is a weird one. Mold, cast, mummified is a very rare one that you don't see often. You have tracks. Original bone is a very rare one. Get close here. We have pre-mineralization and coprolites. Now if we come over here, we see this beautiful cast of Dunkleosteus right above us. This would have been one of the biggest predators of the sea of its time, with it not actually having teeth, but it is one of those first eras of jawed fish. Those teeth that you would see are not actual teeth. They would be sharpened parts of the actual jaw that would have been used for crushing. If we come around here, if we get this section first, if you look right here, we have some beautiful reef building examples. Some of the smaller fossils that you might find, trilobites, or you do see trilobite species and trilobite offshoots. You see a lot of trilobites in Utah. You have some of the very first fish, jawless. They look jawless fish right there. They would glide across the mud and whatever the bottom of the ocean, sucking up whatever nasty organisms there. You have shells, placopods, brachiopods. Fossil reefs are very big. They show us environments, so you get sponges, corals, crinoids. It looks like a little shrimp right there. Some of the environmental fossils that you might find. Here, same thing, a lot of plant fossils, a lot of plant styles here. You have ferns, Lycopoda, Feta, things like that. So those early tree kind of looking things. Very weird things like that. Here we have some actually very easy, beautiful looking specimen here with Mesosaurus, things like that. Some early amphibians, crinoids, beautiful crinoids right there. Those are very beautiful. Right here we have a new flying reptile apparently. I always love when they don't put pronunciations. Celestiventus appears to be some kind of pterosaur, probably closely related to Dimetrodon, or yeah, Dimetrodon. Is it Dimetrodon? I think it might be Dimorphodon. Dimorphodon is the flying one. It looks to be closely related with that snarly tooth, kind of pug-looking face. If we turn around here, we have Chihuahuan-like croc here, or Chihuahua-like crocs. Some very tiny crocodiles that would have evolved to be very small, maybe juveniles of some kind here. Very pretty. Here we get some of the earlier fossils, or not earlier fossils, but this is some of the Triassic, where you have coelacanth or coelacanth, depending on how you want to call it. These are still alive today. They have been found at the bottom of the ocean, so they are called living fossils. But you see these very early lobed fin fish, these unknown giant scorpion tracks right here. Very freaky. Could you imagine a scorpion being like that big? It's just trampling along. Some very agatized conifer wood right there, similar to petrified wood. A nice theropod track. Here we have some bones from the Ischia lasti, which is one of those very early very proto mammals, where you could easily mistake them for reptiles, with them being synapsids. Very early descendants of those first things. Legs not under, arms sprawled out, legs not under their hips, more crocodilian-like than lizard or dinosaur-like. And we come over here, we get some Triassic dinosaur, the Saints and Sinners Quarry. That's a heck of a quarry name. But here we have the beautiful Archosauria of Coelophysis, among the earliest of the dinosaurs to appear in the fossil record. It was a long-legged, three-fingered predator. Again, one of those very early dinosaurs, weird snake-like neck, very elongated, sharp teeth, legs under their hips, early Saurischian-like hip. So you have that, go off to the sides there. Long tail, survived the Triassic-Jurassic extinction. Well, it actually didn't survive, but its ancestors were able to survive a huge mass extinction from the Permian-Triassic kind of era. So dinosaurs became very abundant, and that's where we come over to the big boys like this over here. First, beautiful ichthyosaur. We all love ichthyosaurs. You gotta show ichthyosaurs some love. Those very fossil lizard dolphins, those big eyes for deep aquatic ocean, things like that. But then we turn around here with Allosaurus fragilis. I have no idea what this is holding that up, which is funny. But you have this very beautiful Allosaurus fragilis, has that thicker lower jaw than Gymnodazon, but the crest here actually looks a little smushed down, so I'm curious if that's based on a specific specimen where maybe the crest was a little pushed down. Has these big, huge claws here, massive, robust body, Saurischian hip. This thing is right in the way, and I love that. But this is a beautiful specimen right here, looking down towards us, one of those big predators from the Jurassic. If we get right here, we have Nanosaurus agilis, one of those smaller ornithopods from the Jurassic period. Yep. Same with Dryosaurus, Camptosaurus, those things like that. So it's a very beautiful small specimen, very beautiful cast too. I call it small because in comparisons to things like Camarasaurus or Diplodocus, it looks like an ant. But these things did get relatively big to us today. If we come right here, we have an Apatosaurus femur right on display right here. Very beautiful Apatosaurus femur. Utah's newest named dinosaur, Allosaurus gymnodazon. You can tell it has that thinner jaw, the more abundant pronounced crest there. There's that huge sharp teeth for slicing. The jaw would have come over and cut away. And then right here we have Apatosaurus, incorrectly called Brontosaurus. This is a pelvis, so it would be like the hips. This massive, massive hip. I could treat this like a bench. I won't, but I could treat this like a bench. That's how big their hips are. And this probably isn't even a full-grown Apatosaurus. And up here is that Camptosaurus, one of those early ornithopods like I was just talking about. Let's see if I can get close here. You have those grazing teeth showing that they are herbivorous. Big old thumb spike kind of thing here. Early iguanodontid kind of lineage idea. Big old thing, but would have been probably a snack for some of the larger predators of the time. Here we have another Allosaurus fragilis right here. Again, you can see that thicker jaw would have been there, but it's a little thicker here. The crest isn't quite there, so it's a little more difficult to point to, but this thing looks destroyed. I'm sure they're missing a lot of it. You have a bit of the crest right around here on the other side. I'll try and show that off the best I can. You can see a little bit of it, but not much. Here, It's just ironic because we're just coming from Dinosaur National Monument, if you saw that episode. So we literally have the exact same Camarasaurus cast, just slightly colored different. I still think this one would have been discovered in Dinosaur National. This was based on the one discovered in Dinosaur National Monument. I want to see if they wrote that. Yep. Discover at what was late became Dinosaur National Monument. So it's literally the same Camarasaurus from Dinosaur National Monument. I love that this is like one of the juvenile or smaller Camarasaurus specimens that we just show off. And this big boy right in front of me is I can't read that first word there, Brachiosaurus scapula. And coracoid. You have this giant like shoulder section of Brachiosaurus. I mean, look at the size of this thing. This glass thing could be a giant like meeting table. This thing is massive, and this is just the shoulder. Brachiosaurus got huge. Brachiosaurus was absolutely massive compared to like Camarasaurus, but they're in the same macronarian family. But just looking at the shoulder, it's massive. We come over here, we have a sauropod vertebra. Very big, unlabeled, so I'm going to guess these are either Camarasaurus or Brachiosaurus, considering they're next to Camarasaurus or Brachiosaurus. Then, this beautiful display with Brachiosaurus, Camarasaurus, old school looking dinosaurs. Here we have what appears to be another vertebra, maybe a hip here. I could see part of a hip, part of a vertebra or something. Completely unlabeled. I have no idea what dinosaur this belongs to, so if somebody knows, comment that down below. But this is a very beautiful specimen right here. The reason why I think it's a vertebra, if you get right here, you can see the huge chunk here that would have probably been connected to something. They have the neural arc there, but also this looks very weird, kind of hip shaped. So I could also see how this might be like the merged vertebra that would have been at the hip level. And then, we'll touch on Torvo here in a second, we have the beautiful Stegosaurus, some beautiful Stegosaurus fossils here. A bit of the spine, some plates. This might be a footprint, unless there's something on the other side. So if you come around the other side, you have more of the vertebra on this side with the plates. So you have this beautiful other side here. If we get back on this side, this appears to be a scapula, or the shoulder, kind of connected to some vertebrae. So this might have been kind of upper on the body. And then we're going to turn around here to the bruiser of the Jurassic. The thing that would have been the Tyrannosaurus. I know we love to say Allosaurus and Tyrannosaurus kind of took on that same niche. We only say that because they were the top dominant predator, but this thing would have had these huge crushing jaws, this massive Torvosaurus. I'm so happy that we finally get to see a Torvo. You have these massive, huge teeth right here. If it clamped onto you, would just crush. These are the bruisers of their time, but unlike T-Rex, they had these very much more abundant, usable front claws, huge, elongated, a little bit out, probably for grasping. Probably could chalk that up to sauropods being very abundant in the time. So during the time of Tyrannosaurus, it was more prominent to just have a huger jaw and less arm, because there wasn't as much of a reason to clamp onto things. But with sauropods, I could totally see there being some kind of ecological necessity to like grasp for some reason. Here, right under the massive Torvo, we have the Dryosaurus, which again is actually a baby Dryosaurus. Again, one of those very small ornithopods of the Jurassic period that would have been probably one of the lighter snacks for our Torvo or Allosaurus here, or our next guy, the Ceratosaurus. But these little ornithopods were nothing to scoff at. They would have been very fast, very quick, very agile, probably being in little small groups scampering around. But, I mean, just looking up at this thing, geez. If you get on this side showing its skull, you can see they have a little bit of that, of like a crest there, similar to Allosaurus, probably for mating display, things like that. Huge, robust jaws, not as much as Tyrannosaurus, but still very huge, very robust. These massive teeth, again, not as prominent as Tyrannosaurus, but still you see the early kind of convergent idea of Tyrannosaurus and Torvosaurus. But Torvosaurus is actually a megalosaur. But if we come over here, past our beautiful little stego here, we get to one of the most questioned, weirdly described theropods, the Ceratosaurus. It is one of the only ones with 4 fingers. They turn into, not Archosaurs, because that's the entire family. They turn into, what are they called? Rugops, Carnotaurus, things like that. Abelisaurs. They turn into Abelisaurs, or that lineage diverts. But you have this beautiful Ceratosaurus skull here. You have that crest right there at the top there. A beautiful crest. You have the triple crest where they get their name, Ceratosaurus. These weirdly long teeth for the size of its body. Again, pointing at that paper that Dr. Brian Curtis wrote, suggesting that they are probably saber-toothed in a way, where they would lunge out, swift kill, go for the neck, jugular, piercing, making blood kind of enter the esophagus and drown you in it. Swift kills. We have some beautiful vertebra of them over here, and other just chunks, maybe some ear bones and things like that. But you do have some beautiful vertebrae and things like that. You have this beautiful recreation of a cast skull. It looks like maybe a fused vertebra right there, maybe part of a leg bone back there. That is part of the nasal crest, it appears. And then this is the top upper, that would be the right jaw of the Ceratosaurus. So this would be right, like here would be this area. And then here we got violence in life and death. This is a pathology that you see, that giant hole right there. Try and get a little close so they can see that big hole right there. The Apatosaurus bone on display here was shown excellent example of injury inflicted in life, as well as bone breakage and scavenging marks sustained after death. Areas of bone healing called pathologies on the splintered rib and the edge of the coracoid occurring on the left chest region of the large sauropod dinosaur. It is likely that the animal alive lived with this injury for up to a year, but the rib never healed completely. In contrast to bone pathologies, bone breakage that occurred after death is not common in this specimen. The Apatosaurus was found lying on its side in a typical death pose with its neck and tail arched over its body. Let's see map. I have no idea where that map would be. This was caused by the dying and contraction of ligaments, the drying and contraction of ligaments and tendons along the spine and vertebrae. So as it died, it kind of coiled in. Very freaky, very, very freaky. That would be very weird to see over time. The upper or right side of the animal was damaged due to scavenging and trampling. Ribs were cracked and broken, and the midsection of the animal was scattered before burial. Abundant shed teeth of Allosaurus were found around the skeleton. Allosaurus would have been the generalist carnivore of its time, hunting live prey, taking down sauropods, stegosaurs, hunting our little dryosaurs, nanosaurs, bullying ceratosaurs, but also, if there was a giant dead sauropod, taking that chance to rip at it and eat it. So if we come around here, we get a very, very beautiful display with this massive, massive Camarasaurus right here. I'm assuming this is, no, this is actually Moabosaurus. Lived alongside Utah raptor and Gastonia, the tall spined iguanodonts. I think this is supposed to be over there, not this. This is not an iguanodont. during the early Cretaceous when sauropod diversity was declining, and the taxon was officially named by BYU paleontologists in 2017. And this cast skeleton of a subadult was based on the composite of a bone from a bone bed of up to at least 18 individuals. Most of the bones were badly damaged before they were buried due to trampling, transport, and bone-eating insects. Like the upper Jurassic Camarasaurus, on relief on the east wall exhibit, Moabosaurus had spoon-like teeth and thick-walled, air-filled chambers in its vertebra. So, actually, this is Moabosaurus, so that iguanodonts, the tall spine iguanodonts during the early Cretaceous kind of throws me off, because I think that's supposed to be over here. Speaking of this, let me go over this. We have a lot of iguanodon material here, which is those early looking hadrosaurs. They're not quite hadrosaurs yet. There's a lot that goes into that, but they are the very early ancestors of those. You have part of the spine right here, some chevrons, it looks like, cervical, neck, vertebra, and ribs. I guess those are some ribs. You have those very tall dorsal spines. They had very, very tall dorsal spines. Some more proximal caudal or tail vertebra. You have the lower jaw or dentary with a tooth still in there. Try and get close to that tooth so people can see it. It might be difficult, but if you look right there, that dark chunk in there is a tooth. We have the upper maxilla, the upper jaw right here, with another rooted tooth, and some, looks like plants and things that they probably would have ate of their time, so the little petrified plants and things over here. But moving back over here, we have the massive Moabosaurus right here. Just this behemoth of a sauropod. Surprisingly small compared to most other sauropods. I mean, this is me next to this recreation. Granted, its head probably would have been up higher, giving it more height, yada yada, but this thing is still pretty gargantuan on modern standards. And here we have the beautiful Utah raptor. Utah raptor is the largest member of the dromaeosaurid and a close relative of Deinonychus and Velociraptor. Dromaeosaurids had an enlarged claw, which you can see right here, that giant sickle claw, or kill claw as it's called. Enlarged claw that hold the prey, that hold and prepares kill prey. That's not proper English. On the second toe of the foot. Tracks in China confirm that dromaeosaurids walked on only 2 toes, holding that large claw up and retracted to prevent wear. Dromaeosaurids are closely related to birds. Some specimens preserve feathers with wings and a splay of feathers on the tail. Some small dromaeosaurs were able to glide and perhaps actively fly, but the wings of most were used for display. Utah raptor lived alongside the armored Gastonia and the sauropod Moabosaurus. Display is in this room right there. There's that beautiful Moabosaurus. This skeleton was cast by Gaston designs from bones in the museums of collections. But you have this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Utah raptor here. You have their very thin, surprising jaws for quicker speed tearing. They most likely would have pounced on their prey, trying to pin them down and using that giant sickle claw to clamp into them and slash into them while they bite and rip and just cause as much bleeding as possible, ripping them apart. Very gruesome, I know. Coming over here real quick, we have something very unique. We'll tuck this in real quick. Geosaurus, meaning earth lizard. You have this very aquatic creature, elongated face, this very sharp, pointed, triangular teeth indicating Piscivorian, or Piscivorian, depending on how you want to pronounce it, because it lived in the water. Surprise, surprise, found in Germany. Yet these were strictly marine reptiles. Crocodilians, a diverse group of animals, have persisted for 300 million years. Although we have familiar with today's semi-aquatic forms, throughout history, some crocodilians were long-legged, some herbivorous, and some, like Geosaurus, were strictly aquatic. Geosaurus evolved a heterocircle tail fin, showing this here, this tail fin right here would have been there. As in sharks, the same kind of way sharks have it, in which the vertebral column extends into one of two fin lobes. They also develop small front flippers to help maneuver in the ocean and catch fish. It's their primary food source. Like many marine birds and mammals, Geosaurs developed salt glands to filter salt from the water so they could not dehydrate. Those salt glands would likely be here. This is actually a crocodilian that became fully aquatic, went back into the water, and prevailed in the water, getting that tail flipper and fins that would have helped it swim around. I see that beautiful Suchomimus skull over there. Coming over here, we have Dromaeosaurid and Gastonia. So showing this off right here, we have the armor plate of these large scutes and ridge scutes and small scutes of Gastonia. We have this huge knee joint and where there would be muscle attachment. And here we have the dorsal spine, neural canal, neural arc, and centrum right there, showing that off. Dromaeosauridae. The Dromaeosaurids are a family of Cretaceous feathered theropod dinosaurs, made famous by the velociraptor of Jurassic Park. So you see this beautiful Dromaeosaur right here. They're often nicknamed raptors, and well-known ones include Dromaeosaurus, Velociraptor, and Utah raptor, and Deinonychus, however you want to pronounce it. In general, raptors are bipedal with legs and bodies built for speed and agility. The name Dromaeosaurus even means fast-running lizard. These swift, lightweight theropods are distinctive sickle-shaped toe claw. You can see those giant sickle-shaped toe claws, kill claws there. This claw, also called a killing claw or retractable claw, was a defining feature of the group and was used for hunting and potentially other behaviors like defense or climbing. And this one is very weird because it has these very elongated digits. Could have been for climbing, for grasping. It's really difficult to tell just by looking at the bones. Very small skull, very small, fragile jaws, but they are very unique. And here we have some more, mostly osteoderms and scutes of the Gastonia right here. Gastonia is one of the earlier armored tank dinosaurs like Ankylosaurus. Abundant armor helped protect Gastonia from Utah raptor and other predatory dinosaurs that roamed Utah's early Cretaceous forests. The head, right here, neck and body, and the tail down there were covered with smaller knobs of bone. Only the belly of this armored tank was unprotected. It was safe from harm as long as the belly was not exposed to teeth and claws of the attacker. Unlike, wow, I can't read some of this. In the time of Tyrannosaurus, Gastonia did not have a tail club. This specimen is a 12-foot long juvenile. Adults reached a length of about 16 feet. The name Gastonia honors Robert Gaston. The discoverer and Berge honors Don Berg, the paleontologist that excavated the first described specimen. And as you can see, they don't have that tail club down there. And then you can see they have these giant shoulder spikes, possibly for ramming. And even with the tail, even though they don't have this giant tail club like Ankylosaur, they had these probably sharper osteoderms that they could swing and kind of lash you a little bit. And you have this beautiful skull and neck preserved one. The wide armored skull of Gastonia is a characteristic of ankylosaurs. Early in the life, bones embedded in the skin fused to the skull bones. These small bones, called dermal ossicles, formed a protective armor. The turtle-like beak at the front here was used to bite off vegetation. The small teeth in the back were located only on the sides of the jaws for chewing and that kind of thing. Here we have this beautiful prep lab. Get a little close here, see if you can get under there. It looks like they have an ornithopod in there, an ornithopod cast there. That's very beautiful. What species specifically, I don't know, but that is a very beautiful cast. But whenever they dig stuff up, they would come in here, they'd bring those fossils in here, take them out of the jacket, and figure out how to put them on display or research or file them. And here, I know people have probably been eyeing this one the whole time because of the recent controversy, is Suchomimus. While most of the dinosaurs displayed in this museum hail from Utah, this dinosaur is a notable exception. Suchomimus lived in the Tenere Desert in Niger, Africa, during the late Cretaceous, and was discovered in 1990. The name Suchomimus means crocodile mimic, as you can tell by its huge crocodilian-like skull. Inspired by its long, toothy skull, this might be surprising for a dinosaur discovered in a desert, but the world of Suchomimus was very different from how it appears today. Back then, rivers crisscrossed wow. Rivers crisscrossed a lush, swampy floodplain inhabited by dinosaurs, pterosaurs, crocodiles, turtles, fish, and mollusks. You can tell by its teeth this thing was much more fiscivorian, a very elongated face with some of the same kind of sensors that crocs would have on their nose, so that they can kind of sense things that swim here, so they could launch at them. But Crustaceosaurus is thought to be a close relative or possibly the actual namesake of Suchomimus here. That is not what that paper says, though. That's one paragraph in that entire paper, and it is not saying that Suchomimus is Crustaceosaurus or Crustaceosaurus or whatever it is. Crustaceosaurus is known from partial skull remains. Suchomimus has a lot more remains. Suchomimus is named slightly younger than Crustaceosaurus, so that is why that controversy is there. But there is a theory that was portrayed very early on that they might have been the same dinosaur, just one has more remains than the other. As of right now, that was just a theory that was brought back up. Suchomimus is still valid. Crustaceosaurus is not the new namesake of Suchomimus. And anyways, if you call it Suchomimus, people will know what you're talking about. But this is a beautiful Suchomimus skeleton. But if we turn around here, pause it. Before we move on to this, I actually forgot to show this. This is more Gastonia bergi vertebra. So you have neck from cervical, dorsal from the back, caudal from the tail, and the mid-length of the tail right there, some more caudal. Here we have some dinosaur eggs. You can see they're very robust and broken up. Surprise, surprise, they're surprisingly fragile. These come from a theropod dinosaur. That's all we really know. That's mainly because of the elongated section there. Those are very beautiful. Right here we have our king, the Tyrannosaurus rex, a little warped in the face, similar to the one at the SC State Museum and ones that we've seen. Good example of geological, how geology kind of warps bone and it doesn't stay the same. Huge nostrils, good for smelling, giant orbitals that they would be able to see. Two places for muscle attachments, diapsid because they have that hole. Huge robust jaws for crushing, similar to that Torvosaurus over there. In fact, I'll actually throw a display up. I'll try to throw a display up of Torvosaurus skull and T-Rex skull right next to each other, which means I'm going to go ahead and take this picture there so that you guys can see that comparison of Torvo and T-Rex skull. Giant long teeth, much larger than Torvo for grabbing. Here we have our Triceratops horridus. No plates or no holes in the frill here, missing a lot of the horn from this recreation. BYU Museum founder Dino Jim Jensen in 1964 in Montana. But this is a beautiful recreation of the mostly upper jaw of a Triceratops. We turn here, we have this beautiful Tyrannosaurus, another Tyrannosaurus actually. Needs no introduction, king of the dinosaurs, big thick jaws here, very robust. Actually might be Nanotyrannus now that I'm looking at it. This might supposed to be Nanotyrannus, but I don't think they necessarily have a display. But I think it's supposed to be Tyrannosaurus because I'm pretty sure this has probably been here since before Nanotyrannus. This is fairly short, younger T-Rex most likely, possibly Nanotyrannus. Most likely not, most likely supposed to be Tyrannosaurus. They have that serration here, thick, robust jaws, place for jaw attachment and muscle attachment here, so it could be able to clamp and just bruise. So you get two lineages of the cousins. You have the Allosaurids that turn into the Carcharodontosaurids. Then you have the Coelosaurs, I think is what they're called, that turn into Tyrannosaurs. Here we get the continuation of the beloved Allosaurus, the Carcharodontosaurus, as Nigel Marvins would call it. This is one of the largest theropod dinosaurs ever discovered. This monster grew up to 40 feet long and weighed about 8 metric tons, making it heavier than a bull African elephant. Its skull was long and thin, as you can see here. Perfect for hunting the sauropod dinosaurs it lived with. It also lived with the semi-aquatic Spinosaurus, although they would not have hunted the same prey. So this thing is from the Carcharodontosaurid lineage, but that is a direct continuation of the Allosaurid or Allosauridae lineage. So you can actually see that they likely would have had the similar hunting method with a lot thinner, less robust jaw, most likely the same serration as Allosaurus, being able to just shear and chomp like that. Similar to Allosaurus, it has this massive crest, bony crest on top of its head. I love that they put the teeth as a different color. But yeah, these lived in Africa alongside Spinosaurus. These things most likely ruled the land. Spinosaurus ruled the lakes, rivers, seabeds, other than the new Spinosaurus. Is it like Saveli, whatever the saber-headed Spinosaurus? I'm blanking on what its full name is. Those were actually thought to maybe be waders. My running theory with that is maybe they were trying to take on the niche of Carcharodontosaurus here, but Carcharodontosaurus was way more abundant and successful during that time, so it was able to take them down and be able to wrestle with one of those Spinos. But again, giant eye hole here, there, nostrils, place for muscle attachment here. As you can see, it's a lot less with this right here than if we turn to this T-Rex. This hole here from them being diapsids is much larger than the Carcharodontosaurids, helping indicate that Carcharodontosaurus likely had not a weaker bite force. This thing could still do major damage with its jaws, but not as powerful as T-Rex, and that also helps prove that T-Rex had such a powerful bite. Coming over we have the Teatophanius. This is a blunt-nosed tyrannosaurid. Was named from the Greek roots teres, meaning monstrous, and phonis, equaling murderer. So it's monstrous murderer. Bones of this animal were found in what is now the Grand Staircase Escalate National Monument in southern Utah. Its short snout is bizarre from a Tyrannosaurus, together with newly named Bichehevosaur or Bichehevosaur of New Mexico. This fella may represent a distinct group of southeastern tyrannosaurs. The size of the femur of this specimen, of this subadult, suggests a mass estimate of 667 kilograms, or almost 3/4 of a ton, which is only 1/10 of its cousin Tyrannosaurus rex that lived 8 million years ago. So you can see a bit of this crest is actually a lot more, that crest is a lot more robust and abundant than something like Tyrannosaurus rex. But they do have, there's very thick jaws with a bit of the snoot brought in than Tyrannosaurus rex. This is a bit elongated compared to this one, where its face is a bit more mushed back, but the jaws are still very thick. We have some ribs, part of a maxilla right here. That would have been the nose. That would have been the upper, probably left jaw right there. We have a vertebra right there, just the massive bottom jaw right there. This is a beautiful recreation here. Very beautiful display for a lesser known dinosaur from Utah. But here we get onto Monoclonius. One of the first ceratopsian horned dinosaurs was found. This dinosaur was discovered in Cretaceous deposits in Montana, the Judith River area, in 1876, but paleontologist Edward Drinker Cope, because it always goes back to the Bone Wars, famed for his rival with Othniel Charles Marsh. This dinosaur is characterized by its single large nasal horn and 2 smaller brow horns. They're very tiny. They would have only probably came up to about here. And then the keratin sheath would have probably brought them a bit more. Its name means comes from the Greek word monos, meaning single, and klon, meaning twig. At the first glance, you might assume the name single twig or single stem refers to the single large protruding horn from the animal's nose. However, the name actually has to do with the dinosaur's tooth structure. This replica was donated to the BYU Museum of Paleontology by the Smithsonian Institution. So if you get down here, you can actually see some of that tooth structure looking like a weird single twig right there with those famous ceratopsian teeth for some rougher prey. They do have that beak, a bit of the frill here smushed back. They have these. They are centrosaurian, meaning they are closely related to Triceratops, if I'm not mistaken. I think so. Actually, I think that might be, I think centrosaurians were above that one river, like Triceratops and this guy here. But that probably means that it was probably more isolated than unlike Chasmosaurians, which lived in giant groups. If we come here, beautiful nautilus display, or nautiloids. You get to see the evolutionary tree of them, where they appeared in the timeline, a bit of the suture pattern there. Fossil cephalopods, these huge ones down here, you get to see how some of the suture patterns became a little more complex as you go, with that one being very prevalent, and you can see those suture patterns very well. Here we have the jaws of death of this giant mosasaur. This one is specifically Ganathomyrus. In the late Jurassic period, dinosaurs still ruled the land. 3 types of large marine reptiles, mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and ichthyosaurs, ruled the seas. However, despite their large size, they were not dinosaurs. This fella is a mosasaur with the length of about 34 feet. Mosasaur has teeth on the roof of its mouth. You can see them back there. That's to help keep prey in their mouth and pull it back into their throat so they can swallow it. Long, slender bodies, large hands and feet used for paddles, and a tail fin. Mosasaurs are marine lizards closely related to modern varineared lizards or monitor lizards, such as Komodo dragon such as the Komodo dragon of Indonesia. The large gouges on the lower jaw, marked by yellow. Actually, I think those are down here. It might be really difficult to see on camera, but if you see those two yellow dots, try and get close to that. If you see those two yellow dots there, that's what they're referring to. Are tooth scars made while jaw wrestling with another mosasaur. The rounded shape of the scars indicate the marks were infected, but were healing at the time of death. Similar tooth marks are common on mosasaur's jaws. This is likely some kind of mating ritual to kind of scare off not prey, but competition or something along those lines, to wrestle each other to kind of, choose which one gets to mate. Intrasexual selection here. Here we have a baby maiasaur, the duckbill, name meaning good mother. These are very tiny, would have been cared for by its mother in its nest. You have the duckbill in the front, most likely to help with chewing of aquatic or similar aquatic plants, with the back helping it choose maybe some ferns and things like that from land. This is a very small specimen. Yeah, very beautiful specimen. Here we have a giant pteranodon. You can see they have that fourth digit is very elongated. That is actually what helps them fly. They would have had a membrane of like skin that would probably come to about here. They would be able to extend and help them fly. Huge robust chest for connecting muscles from the wing to the chest to be able to actually flap its wings to get these massive creatures off the ground. This one specifically being one of the larger species. The beautiful crest on the back of the head, good indication of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sexual dimorphism, to see male or female. Females tending to have a smaller one, males tending to have a larger one. Hollow bones to cut down on weight to help be able to fly. In here we have a Rhamphorhynchus, which is a smaller species of pterosaur from the Cretaceous, maybe Jurassic, late Jurassic, Germany. Germany has some very good fossil preservation, apparently, with pterosaurs, things like that. One of the smaller ones, most likely fish eater, weirdly round teeth like that. Coming over here, we have this beautiful amnioid. You can see those beautiful suture patterns on them to help indicate time of them. But these things are huge, beautiful patterns. Coming over here, we have some more ornithischian family of hadrosaurs. You get to see their giant toe claw that looks like a skin impression, some of the dental battery because their teeth would be kind of lined up like that. So you see those teeth kind of lined up together to make this giant grinding, just grindstone machine to help tear apart plants. This also appears to be some more skin of Anatonosaurus here from the Hell Creek. This is a mummified duckbill, so this probably is a skin sample. Before we move on to, we can go ahead and do this. This is Albertosaurus, another early Tyrannosaurus. Well, I say early Tyrannosaurus, fairly late, but same time earlier than T-Rex. Sometimes known as Gorgosaurus, Albertosaurus meaning the Alberta lizard, surprise, surprise, discovered in Alberta, Canada, hence the name, was a smaller, slender Tyrannosaurus, meaning tyrant lizard, that grew to the length of about 26 feet in width, 26 feet in length, weighing about 2 tons. Despite its size, in comparison to its larger relatives, it was a ferocious predator that probably hunted the herbivores, horned and armored dinosaurs of the late Cretaceous lowland forests in Alberta. Named for the province in Canada where it was discovered, Albertosaurus was also common in Montana just before the end of the Mesozoic era. You can See, it's much smaller Saurischian hip there. Very beautiful, abundant crest, fairly thick jaws, still very powerful jaws, a very keysake thing of the tyrannosaurid species. Those, not the largest compared to T-Rex, but still fairly large teeth here. You have these holes here for muscle attachment to help give it that extra oomph in its jaw. And here we have the massive beauty, one of the largest crocs, Dinosaurus. To look at this massive thing here, synapsid, or no, diapsid, extra hole, nostrils, eyes up here too. Just getting in its jaws here. If dinosaurs were the terror of the Cretaceous, Dinosaurus was the terror of the dinosaurs. This 6-foot-long skull belonged to a 3-ton, 37-foot individual, every bit as long and heavy as a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Yeah, as long as heavy as a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Dinosaurus likely preyed primarily upon dinosaurs and employed the same predatory tactics as its living cousins, the modern crocodiles. Erupting from still water to devour helpless dinosaurs, this bad B-movie-sized crocodile turned the Cretaceous food chain upside down. Sitting in the water, it would lunge out, clamp onto things, probably pull them into the water, start death rolling, ripping them apart. But this thing is massive. I mean, put your arm in his mouth. I mean, you think saltwater crocodiles are huge. This is probably still not even one of the largest specimens you would find. Here's, we have the Rhinorex, very weird droopy face, duckbill, giant dental battery. This cast is based on the skull that was found with a partial articulated skeleton. The boar skin impression. The skin impression are exhibit in the case below the pteranodon. So over there is the skin impressions of the Rhinorex here. Part of the generic name, rhino, refers to the large nasal, typical of the group of duck-billed dinosaurs, from the Latin condo, meaning berry, and rups, meaning cliffs, in reference to the discovery in the Book Cliffs above Thompson, Utah. The Book Cliffs is part of the, in part are composed on the Nelson Formation, a 75-million-year-old beach, and nearshore deposits of sand in the west edge of the Cretaceous Inland Seaway. So when that giant western interior seaway was in the middle, this thing would have been near it. Over here we have some more Hadrosaurus skin impression, probably from the same one over there. Does it say? Caxon Gryposaurus maybe. But you do see these beautiful skin impressions from these mummified remains. Very rare thing. Failed planet, iron meteorite. The meteorite is part of the Campo del Chilo fall that hit Argentina about 5,500 years ago. It is a fragment of the core of shattered planetesimal that did not grow large enough to become a planet. It originated 4.5 billion years ago in the early stages of the formation of our solar system. So this thing could have been a planet at one point, sadly. It did not. Coming over here, we have Megacerops, Uniatherum, and some kind of other deer skull similar thing. These are giant mammals in between the horse and rhino lineage that would have appeared after post dinosaur during the Eocene epoch. Not true rhinos, because they have the bulbs on their head, which would indicate that that's part of their skull, so probably more horse-like, but body shape similar to rhinos. Down here we have some beautiful fish fossils, turtle fossils, this giant skull of some kind of mammal, plant fossils, this giant Green River gar from the Green River Formation, a stingray, a giant fish there, some more plants here, a lot of plants here, because the Green River Formation isn't just in Wyoming, it extends down into Utah. So when we were in Kemmer, a lot of the same thing you find there, you will also find here, which I think is beautiful. Here, we actually get this Unitan crocodile here, this massive pointed head there, just a massive crocodile that would have existed in its time. 45 million years ago, Utah was a lush tropical environment crisscrossed by rivers and lakes. This is indicated by fossils of tropical plants as well as ectothermic reptiles like crocodilians, which require warm temperatures year-round. This animal is a crocodiloid, meaning that it was most likely related to crocodiles, more closely related to crocodiles than alligators. While not being a true crocodile itself, this crocodiloid has an overbite rather than a crocodile's jagged smile. Of interlocking teeth, only the top row of teeth would be visible when its mouth is closed. So you would have had the bottom jaw there and the top jaw would be over, so you would only see the top jaw's teeth. Coming over here, we have a archodon. This specimen is the upper skull of an ancient mammal that once roamed Utah. The evolutionary relationship of heliophiles like archodon remain uncertain, but they may have been part of the entelodonts, powerful pig-like predators and omnivores. Large zygomatic arches gave it extremely strong jaw muscles. That would be that arc on the back of its skull. You would get jaw muscles that attach up into there to help they would come down into the jaw to be able to pierce that jaw up real fast and rip it apart. This highly developed skull structure had a tooth profile that indicates incisors, canines, premolars, and molars, providing it was a powerful bite that allowed it to feed on almost anything. This thing would have been a hyper carnivore most likely. Coming over here, we have the Irish elk, one of the most beautiful, just massive deer relatives. Although called the Irish elk, Megaloceros is really a type of giant deer. It's named elk because the antlers look like elk antlers. It gets the idea across. I think they look more like moose antlers, but hey, who's counting here? Well-preserved fossils of this giant deer are common in lake sediments and peat bogs in Ireland. However, Megaloceros can be found all throughout Europe. The Megaloceros was considered the largest deer species to ever walk the earth. The genus name Megaloceros means giant or great antler. Surprise, surprise, because of the great antlers. A reference to the deer's massive antlers. They had a height of 7 feet at the shoulder, and the antlers spread around 12 feet in. These antlers were shed and regrown annually like modern deer and elk. The impressive size and elaborate antlers of the Irish elk made this remain highly desirable as decorative pieces for the wealthy of the aristocrats. In 1865, a good head with antlers had a value of more than 30 weeks' wage of a low-skilled worker. That is a weird fact that now you all know. There's this beautiful physical recreation of one. I think it's very beautiful. If we turn around here real quick, we get the muskox in Utah. During the Ice Age, much of the western Utah was submerged under the glacial waters of Lake Bonneville. Along the shores grayed bison and muskox, similar to Alaska, kind of. Mammoths and mastodons were also there. Llamas and giant ground sloths. They kept a wary eye on large cave bears, dire wolves, and saber-toothed cats. This woodland muskox skull was found along the ancient shoreline deposit of Lake Bonneville at the point of the mountain. So you can see those giant not antlers, but horns kind of come down that they would use to likely ram into things or knock them around, maybe dig some stuff up, similar to modern muskox. Coming over here, well, first we're going to hit this cave bear skull, most commonly known as the cave bear. The Ursa spectris is by far one of the most common Pleistocene mammals. In the fossil record, it is mainly due to the behavior of frequenting caves. So since they go in caves, caves preserve surprisingly well. I don't know. These bears would have grown to 10 feet long, putting them between grizzlies and Kodiak in size. They're standing upright. They could reach heights up to 12 feet. Cave bears were predominantly herbivores, similar to modern bears. But yeah. But here we have one of these giant Megalotherium ground sloths, similar to old school sloths. They have these giant claws here that they would use for tearing things up. Over here we have Orem ground sloth. We also have another ground sloth over here. You can see some of the giant claws and the ribs. These things would have been very abundant. They're thought to have dig burrows too. These huge digging claws indicate that they were digging animals. They have these very rigid teeth for being generalists. Same with the, here we have the mammoth, which is a giant elephant that existed in North America. You can see where the tusks would have been. You have the eye hole, well, not the eye hole, but the hole there. The eyes would have been on the side. Here we have this Smilodon, the famous predator. There we actually have a moose. Just wanted to point that out. We have a stag moose, giant antlers, probably bigger than a modern moose. But going back to our Smilodon over here, elongated incisors, cat-like toes, good for pouncing. These would have gone into the jugular. Coming over here, we have some more indicators of the species. Would have been a swift killer. Go for the jugular, pierce it, blood pours into your throat, drowning you. Very gruesome death. Similar to Ceratosaurus in a way. It's very weird, but very interesting that this is a convergent thing. Gorgonopsids, Ceratosaurus, and these are thought to be saber-tooths. But yeah, these are very beautiful specimens here. If we come over here to the last thing in this beautiful museum, we have this absolutely massive palm frond that was fossilized, excavated, and brought here. I think it's very cool, very interesting, and very beautiful. And these are very good indicators of the environment that they would be found in.